Okay, so there's a lot of story to be told, and as I said, he mentioned one, but this man's life is a very interesting life, and perhaps, Bertie, we can just start with a little snapshot. Married, 4 kids, give us a little snapshot of your family life, and then from there, help us understand what is Waste Plan, what do you do, just give us a framework for your business world.
So, married a Canadian lady.
There we go.
So first of all, she was a missionary. I think she's still a missionary. Here's the beautiful part about this story. I lived a losbandige lewe. What's it in Engels?
Wild life. Reckless life. As baie Afrikaans mense hier so sê, ek 'n bietjie Afrikaans praat as jy wil.
So it started off with my dad never told me he loved me. So I grew up insecure teenager. I never saw him hug my mom, any one of our kids. I never heard the words, I love you, or you're a champ, you have what it takes. So I grew up very insecure, trying to prove myself to the world, because my dad couldn't say it. Now looking back, I can see everything he did to tell me that I have what it takes. He could never say it. So of course, you can understand what a young man does. You go find affirmation in the arms of girls. And that's how I lived. So I would do stupid things at school to get affirmation from my mates and then impress girls. So I got saved, and every relationship I get myself into eventually turns physical. And at one point, I just got so fed up. I said, I just do not have what it takes to have a pure relationship with a woman. I'm done. And I cried out to God. And I said, Lord, would you please... I said to him, I'm done with this. I'm happy to live single forever if this is the only way I can remain pure. And if you have a wife for me, you'll send her to me. So I eventually distanced myself from women. I developed a reputation. Don't go near this guy. Because he's just going to be rude. And then one day my friend told me I need to do him a favor to go pick up 2 volunteers from the airport, 2 missionaries coming in. Got another friend of mine. We picked up these 2 missionaries from Canada. We dropped them at their house. I shared my number with them and just invited them into the friendship circle. And they came and they kept coming. And after a month, we went hiking on Table Mountain, and I felt God say to me, you can marry her, this one. I was like, whoa, what happened here? And so I started pursuing a relationship with her. 8 months later, we were married. And when we started dating, she said to me, one condition, you only kiss me on my wedding day. And here God sent me one of his most purest virgins after I've lived such a wild life. And that was my first encounter with what surrender looks like. When you surrender, this is what God can come up with. And it was a blessing beyond what I could imagine, beyond what I could even put together. He sent me one of his purest daughters, a missionary. While I was crying out to him for this, he took my wife in Canada, living in Vancouver, while I'm in Cape Town. And he sent her on a 40-day fast. And while she was fasting for 40 days, he told her, pack up and go to Africa. And that's what God can do when we surrender. So that's where this started. So I'm married with her, and we have 4 kids, 17, 15, 13, and 10.
And are all, strangely enough, from Pretoria, passionate surfers. Get that right now. Is that the truth?
Yeah. So that's the truth. So they decided they want to become surfers for life. And that's why we are going to J-Bay every holiday and not to Ballita.
Yet. We're going to change that. Okay, now I know you're going to tell, obviously, the God story of what happened in your life through Waste Plan. And I think what you're going to hear with Bertie again and again and again is moments where he comes to a place of surrender and God does things that you can never have imagined. And really, that's what I believe as we were chatting last night. Our stories resonated because I would say that's been our story. Every time I'm willing to open my hands and lay it down, God does things I could never have imagined. And yet every time it's in my hands, some things happen, but never that exciting. And so, but before we tell the story of what happened in your Waste Plan journey, what is Waste Plan? What is the business? What does it do? It's quite a unique business. I was reading up on the website, and I was like, we don't know about this stuff. So talk to us just briefly.
We manage waste for companies in a way to send as little as possible of the waste to landfill sites. And how you do that is you use labor to try and extract as much of the recyclables. And when you extract recyclables, you can sell it, and that becomes an income stream. So you move something from a cost to an income.
Wow.
And in that process, that person who does the sorting creates the value. We don't create it. It's that person sorting it. So here's a person that takes something that's a liability, turn it into an asset. And that's become our story. We uplift lives by converting waste into opportunities for those people.
That is worth some appreciation, yeah. It's worth just browsing the site because the story is inspiring, and we're going to talk about the impact project that comes off the back of it. But let's dive in, because really this is the story that you say there's one story worth telling. Your wife is part of that. But Waste Plan, how did it start? Where did it get to? And why are you and I sitting telling a story right now?
I don't know.
Okay.
But so back early 2004, I was a vacuum cleaner salesman. I left home with the desire to get rich quick, so I became a vacuum cleaner salesman.
Freebie, there we go.
And because I wanted to become the opposite of my dad. He couldn't provide, he couldn't keep a job, and he blamed everyone for his failures. So I decided I'm going to become the opposite. My wife's never going to work. I'm going to tell everyone I love them, and I'm going to make a lot of money. Sure. Before I could do those, I have to first make the money. So I left home, became a vacuum cleaner salesman. And in that process, I met Raymond Ackerman. He looked at the story. He said, you're not going to build a business out of this. And he told me how he built Pick n Pay. He said, if you can find an idea that can fit this model, I can help you. And then a friend around the braai gave me an idea. And he said, listen, I've got this idea. He's a consultant to the food and beverage industry. They've got a lot of waste. They don't deal with it the proper way. If I'm willing to set up a company with him, he'll give me the first 2 clients, startup capital. He just wants 30% shares. So I took it to him, Raymond. I said to him, what do you think of this idea? He said, it's a fantastic idea. This is the future of waste management. I'll help you every step of the way. If you do what I tell you, you can come back as many times as you want. And he stuck to his word until he died 3 years ago. 20 years he mentored me.
Wow.
So in that process, a great idea, great timing. I shared with him last night. It was our booming years, the early 2000s. Remember, we were growing at 5% per annum GDP. It was an amazing. South Africa was the global success story, the after Madiba story. So we were just thriving. Everyone was thriving. Our business was thriving. I had a great mentor, a great business. And everyone was telling me how great I was. And if someone tells you that long enough, you'll believe it. And so I started believing it. I started believing that I'm actually really, really great. And what does that mean? I was better than.
Sure.
And that's where the problem starts. Because we are great. We are amazing people. God made us in His image. We carry His image. We are the only part of His creation that has the ability to create. So we are the only part of His creation called into a place of co-creating with Him. How amazing must we be?
Yeah.
Okay, so He placed us there. So yes, we are all amazing, but we're never better than.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem started. I started hearing from everyone how great I was and thinking I was better than everyone else. So it was a story of me becoming more important than I ought, thinking of myself more than I ought, thinking of others less than I should. And so the only one who was telling me I was becoming proud was my wife, and everyone else was telling me how amazing I was. And you can imagine who I listened to. Yeah, and so 7 years in, I found myself exhausted. My marriage was on the rocks. And I had a knock on the door by a sheriff of the court with a court order from SARS to shut me down. Now, there's a lot of stories in there. How did I get from this to that? And the answer is really, I could tell you all the beautiful stories, but the answer was pride. Because the Bible promises you, before the fall comes the pride. I promise you it's true. I lived that. My pride caused me to make decisions to make myself look good that did not make business sense any longer. And the team around me got so used to everything Bertie says works out well. And they kept on just following whatever I said. Because I was the main oak. I was that important that nobody could challenge me any longer. So our decisions we started making was more about me looking good than good business decisions. And one decision started losing us. We started losing more money on one contract than what the entire company made. And of course, my pride told me, we'll pull this one through like we have always. We can pull anything through. Of course we can do this. When it didn't happen. So we stopped paying our SDL and our pay-as-you-earn. You stop paying that thing. SARS is coming after you. They came after me with a court order. And that's where I surrendered for the first time, truly. That's where I looked back on my life and I realized the best I can produce in 7 years with a great business, great economy, great mentor was a bankrupt business.
I just want to pause here. He said this to me last night, and I paused and we smiled at each other. He said, the best thing I could produce in 7 years, as he said now, with Raymond Ackerman as a mentor and a great economy, was a bankrupt business. In my efforts, the best I came up with was carry on.
That was my absolute best.
I smiled because I'm like,
efforts.
that's so true of how God intercepts our lives. At our absolute best, we're bankrupt.
Yeah.
But with His grace, there's so much more, which is obviously how the story starts to turn. Yeah.
And that's when I surrendered. What I saw, God showed me, here's His kingdom, here's my kingdom. He showed me the gap between the two. My kingdom had a marketing campaign called Jesus. And there's this big gap between the two. I was not building His kingdom. It made me felt nauseous because you see the truth for the first time. And that's when I truly surrendered. Because I was convinced I cannot do this, I was not interested to even try any longer. I surrendered to God. I said, take whatever I have, this business, whatever is left of it, my skills, my desires, my hopes, plans, ambitions, dreams, everything. Have it all. Whatever you want to do with my life, I will submit to that, whatever. And I truly meant that for the first time, actually. I actually meant that. And then 2 miracles happened. The legal team, acting on behalf of the client, where we were losing so much money, approached me with a proposal to change the contract to pay us more. How does that work?
Exactly.
Took us into the profits. I went to SARS with a payoff agreement, and they accepted. And they went back and they reversed the court order. 2 miracles after surrender. 2 things I knew I couldn't do, and that's when I paid attention. And I realized God actually has a plan. I was standing in the way. So I had to completely get out of the way. In 2013, January, I decided to fast because now I'm trembling under the fear of the Lord, not sure how to run this business that I ran into the ground and He rescued. And somehow He allowed me to continue to lead it. And I was really afraid for doing this again because we have all these lives of these people we employ. What's going to happen to them if I step in the way again? I felt God say to me, He wants me to give shares away. It was still bankrupt, so it was easy. So I agreed to it. Yeah.
If that's you in the room, good time to make a deal with God, you know what I mean?
It was like a negative value. So I promised God I'm going to give Him the shares if He shows me how. For the whole year of 2013, He didn't show me how. Because there was one more thing He wanted to teach me. Towards the end of 2013, I got really ill. I developed a growth on my prostate. I went through all the tests, and eventually my GP told me, you've got all the signs of prostate cancer. The blood test, PSA is through the roof. And he immediately got me an appointment at the urology hospital to go for tests. And the Sunday in church, I felt God say, as I was sitting in worship, my son, you have no cancer, your growth is gone. And I went to the urology hospital the next Wednesday. And after 24 hours of tests, I came back and said, put back your mouth guard, there's nothing wrong with you.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
So whether I had the cancer or not is completely irrelevant. What's relevant is He got my attention.
Sure.
What happened is when I walked out of the GP's room, God showed me the face of my wife and my kids. And I broke down crying, understanding how I was sacrificing them for this thing I'm building. And just another email, just another phone call, just another meeting, just another trip. Just another evening of getting home late, missing supper, late for supper. Just another this and a that where I was just taking a little bit more and just taking a little and just taking a little bit more. Just leaving the home a little bit earlier. Just breaking another small promise. Not taking kids to school after I promised to do that. Just all these little things. God showed me every one of those things, how I was just taking from them one by one by one. And He asked me, what are they going to say at your grave if you don't make this? What would your kids say at your grave if you don't make the next 12 months? And the only thing that they have is the memories and the time they had with me. And I was robbing them of those stories. And I was giving it to this business I'm building. So they were busy paying a price for me and my business, my ego and my self-importance. And I repented of that. I made him a promise. I remember King Hezekiah was going to die. He cried out to God. He asked God to extend his life. God gave him 15 years, and I cried out to God on my way to the car. Asked God, if you would extend my life, I promise to seek you every day. I'll never start a day without you ever again. I'll apply a radical obedience to whatever you tell me. I'll honor my family with the time that they deserve. So that day, October 2013, I went home with a new promise. But I had to repent first. And I had to sit in front of each one of my kids and ask them to forgive me for how I've been stealing from them. And I had to ask my wife to forgive me how I've been stealing from her. And I remember when I sat with my 2-year-old, I was sitting there crying, and she looks at me and she says, "Are you crying, Daddy?" I go, "I am crying." And she puts her hand on my shoulder and says, "It's going to be okay."
Oh, wow.
And I just realized how my kids are so quick to forgive. And my wife, so quick to forgive. Just me, this main guy, this big deal in my own world. The first moment where I sat in front of them and I just said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for robbing from you. Will you forgive me?" And they immediately forgave me. It's like, boom, weg, gone.
Yeah.
And it was just so refreshing for me how quickly our families forgive us if we would just bend the knee. Just that. And that's the day I started to honor them with my time. So now I have prioritized them above everyone else. They are more important than anyone else. When Andre and I met on the phone, he asked me to come. I said to him, "Hold on, wag. Friday morning is my date morning with my wife. I cannot say yes until I speak to her." In the past, I would say, "Of course, yes, I'll do it." And then I'll go convince my wife. But think about that, how much we do that. Think about that. Lovey, it's for the kingdom.
I wish we had known that was your day. We would have put you both up in the guest house and told you to relax, you know?
Yeah, so I spoke with her about it, and she said, "Yeah, you can do it, but you're going to take me away because the day after that is my birthday." So tomorrow's her birthday. So I'm flying to J-Bay now, and she's meeting me there this afternoon. But that's the point, is when I started honoring them with my time and with my commitments, somehow God started taking care of the business.
Yeah.
Coming home for dinner, just think about this. When you have an appointment with a client and you're late, what do? You let them know. When you're late for dinner, what do? Well, I didn't let them know. I would justify it in my head and prepare for the fight when I get home. Because, my wife is going to complain again. But I was building this business for them. You see, that's the lie we get trapped into. So the thing is, when we're late for anyone, we would apologize and do our best to get there on time. But somehow when we miss dinner, we don't do that. So those are the things God started showing me. When I make a promise to take kids to school in the morning, when I make a promise to pick them up from school, to be at my son's hockey game or his soccer game, when I make these promises, God just showed me, start honoring those. Even if it takes saying no to business deals and client meetings and team meetings, say no to those things and say yes for your family and watch me do things. So he's done amazing things. So of course, he rescued the business, and the business has been roaring. Now, after that, he introduced me to a man called Fransjo van Niekerk to show me how he gave shares away, and he started Mergon. And Mergon is just a non-profit company that has done amazing things. So he showed me that. I set up a non-profit company called Nika Capital. Gave God 30% shares. It's an interesting story. I asked God how many shares, and he was quiet. So I said, how about 30? And he was quiet. I gave him 30%. But whether I gave him 1 or 30 or 100, I now understand it doesn't matter to him.
Sure.
He owns it in any case. He wants the heart of obedience. Because once you take that first step of obedience, he's got you in motion. He can use that.
So good.
Doesn't matter. And so eventually, 2 years later, I felt God just whispered to me, he wants control. And that means 51. And so I moved it up to 51. So since 2016, God owns control of the business. So I gave 51% of the business to Nika Capital. Nika Capital is a non-profit company. It exists for the kingdom of Jesus. So the dividends go there. When we do dividends, all our social investment goes there. And all the money that goes through Nika Capital go to help underprivileged kids with education, currently just in Pretoria.
Just to say this, your heart that burns for education in this country. I'm going to definitely, before we finish today, we're going to close with a little bit of a dream there. But yeah, it's significant. I just want to say it's significant. At dinner last night, it stopped me in my tracks when you started talking about the potential of what businesses that partner together could do with government through education. So I'm just putting that on us, just to say that behind everything he's talking about is a reality. Not just the shares at 51%, but Nika Capital's dream, its pursuit, the organizations he's partnering with, it's significantly shifting the educational needle in our nation. And so listening to him, I'm going, he's just doing it because God kind of spoke and he did it. But as he goes about whatever God tells him to do next, behind the scenes is this thing that's actually a machine that's starting to build momentum. And God's going to do something significant through it. So a lot more was happening than I need the shares of your company. God was seeing the education of the nation. And so I just love the story. I can't encourage you enough with some of what you're seeing. But I get too excited. Anyway, carry on.
When I moved it to 51%, I gave away control. So you see, that is the biggest idol for the entrepreneur, is control of the thing that he started.
Sure.
Because what are the words that we as entrepreneurs use? Me, I built it. My sweat, my capital, my time, my energy, my contacts, me and I all the time. We built this thing because every entrepreneur is thinking of building a thing worth billions. We all do that. And now God comes in, he says, I want control of this thing. That could be worth billions. I want control of this. This is the toughest thing that anyone has ever asked me. And so it took me a year to obey. I just verbalized this to a friend of mine, and he kept asking me, when are you going to obey? Wow. When are you going to obey?
So we actually have cards in front of you today. You're going to write down what your obedience step looks like. I'm just going to remind you of it for the next 5 weeks. They're quiet.
Whatever that is.
No one's excited about that in the room. Yeah. Okay.
And so, but when I did that, all of a sudden the responsibility of making sure that this thing works out shifted. I can't explain it, but I felt free for the first time in my life. Now it's not my responsibility to make sure this all turns out. That's his. So my responsibility reduced to a couple of things, and here they are. I need to seek him every day. In the word he says, seek me, love me, obey me, believe me. So that's all I have to do now. I need to seek him. Whatever I hear him tell me, I need to obey. I need to completely set myself in his direction with my heart, my mind, and my emotions, to love him. And I have to believe him. But nowhere in our relationship with God, do we have the responsibility to make sure the business turns out well. And that's what I started experiencing for the first time. If I can just do my part, he'll take care of the rest. And it worked out that way. If you seek him every day, if you're radical in obeying what he tells you, if you believe him, somehow the responsibility of your family's security, your provision at home, your kids' education, your kids' marriage partners, the success of your business, the inheritance you leave behind.
Come on.
All those things he takes away from you. All of it. And it's his responsibility in any case.
I want to come in practically for the guys in the room here because, he speaks about giving his business away. Practically, the money is going to causes that are not under his control, of course. But in their actual business, in Wasteplan, one of the things that you said to me, and I found this fascinating, is the thing that your key team, your Exco team, look forward to most annually is that meeting as the year begins after they've sought God to share what's God saying to us for this. Can you talk about that? Because that's a very practical way of guys going, what does that actually mean for my business? And then you told me that story, and I thought, wow, they're literally making decisions as an Exco team based on what God's whisper is in each person's heart for the year. It's fascinating. And you say you look forward to it every year.
Yeah, because now, remember, he's our main shareholder. So what should we as executives do? We are appointed by the shareholders, right?
Yeah.
Who's our shareholder? God Almighty, King of the universe, owner of all, bigger than Elon Musk. He's our shareholder.
Come on.
Think about it. If Elon calls you today and he tells you, give me an hour every morning. I've got it in my calendar, 5 to 6. You and I do a phone call. And give me 51% of your business. I will give you every resource, every connection, all the money in the world.
Example.
We are going to build the biggest roaring thing this earth has seen.
Good example.
Just give me that. Elon, will you do it?
All of us.
All right, so the man bigger than him has asked me for that. So seek him. God, what do you want me? How do you want us to steward your asset? This is your asset. Luckily, you've invited me in as a co-shareholder to join in with you. How privileged I am. But how do you want us to steward this thing? So I fast in the beginning of the year. I take a week out, fast, hear his voice, come to the team, share it with them. And now we're in the rhythm where every year, third week in January, we meet, we talk about what God said for the year, and we plan our year out based on the conviction we developed from that week of fasting. I just shared a story last night how God showed us that there's a strike that's going to come. We had no unions in our business. We still don't have any unions in our business. But he showed me one year, there's a strike that's going to come. It's going to come through a union. I shared it with my team. They said, impossible, there's no union. Exactly a month later, a union formed in the factory in Cape Town. They got majority, and they made financial demands. Under our noses, nobody saw it happen.
And you know what to do because God had spoken.
And I said to the team, I told you, this is what God said. The good news is he showed us how to handle this. We did exactly the way he said, which was 100% against what most HR professionals will recommend. 100% against it. Our HR guy says, you can't do this. I said, is it illegal? They said, no. I said, then we'll do it. Because God said, so we did that. And we won it. We won that war. And eventually the union sent us a letter and asked us, would you please take our staff back? We walk away from all 11 of financial demands. Can you please just take them back? So we won. God showed us how.
I want that to land. There are people in this room that fight unions often.
Right.
And when you told me that story, I realized the victory is ours. It's guaranteed for us. And then I realized, okay, but hang on. The fact that there was a victory in your union story was because 7 years in, you gave everything to God and you trusted him and you started meeting once a year saying at the beginning of the year, what is God saying to our company? What's not what the market doing? What's the next cool step to take? What are we excited for? Just what's God saying? And then of course there's this victory. And I just want to trust that God somehow in his infinite wisdom, in his providence, that you would be sitting in the room today, that you would hear the wisdom you need to hear to navigate those waters if they are your waters. But that his voice would give you an unfair strategy, and not the standard one, not the one that someone's given you from outside, but that the Spirit of the wisdom of God has given you strategies to get those victories, because there are things like the storms that come at us, and it's not our portion as children of God. It's not what God has for his people. And so we fight them in worldly ways. And I got so fired up as you told that story, because you said, I did everything I was told not to do because God spoke to me differently. And I just want to say, do what God tells you to do, people. Just write it in your journal, seek him out, find the faith you need, phone a friend who has the wisdom of heaven, doesn't matter. But I'm believing that as we pursue life of building beyond business, or legacy as we call it, that you would really start to see significant victories happening against all odds, not because we followed protocol, but because we followed the whisper of the Spirit of God in our hearts. And we've got to believe that as a church. And I just want to honor you for doing that. You're a courageous man. When he walks straight. If there's someone coming in his direction, they must move. I've seen it, okay? And it's not arrogance, it's a confidence. But I just want to honor you for the confidence you've had in hearing that whisper from the time that you said, God, I'll do what you call me to do. It's inspiring. And I'm just praying that it gets on us as you speak.
As you speak now, I realize the important thing. If you can only teach your kids one thing, you're limited to this one thing before you die, what would you teach them? What would be the one thing that will set them up for success? My wife and I went through this, and it was, if we could teach each of our kids to hear the voice of God clearly for themselves, they will be set for life. Okay.
True.
And I think each one of us have that responsibility to hear the voice of God clearly for ourselves, not through a preacher, and not through a sermon, and not through a book. Directly a relationship with the Father. So I think
There was something else interesting he did in this space. I mean, he's a very interesting guy. You can hear this. We were speaking about some of the rhythms of God, like just some of his ways. And I don't know what I mentioned, but Israel came up in the conversation. You asked a little bit about Israel, and he went on to say that you as a family had begun to study and understand the 7 feasts, 7 biblical feasts, and realized that the public holidays that we give to celebrations are counterfeits. It's not right or wrong. Of course, we enjoy a public holiday in a bra. That's not the point of the conversation. But it was just interesting to see how far you'd gone to go, God, I want to be about your rhythms. And as a family, an Afrikaans family, that's not Jewish. You can check it out. But that an Afrikaans man and his family could say, I just want to understand the ways of God, even small details like when they have feasts and why they have feasts and what the feasts are about. We've just thrown away and got about the standard. And all those little details about Bertie and the story of his, it's all in there. And so again, just fascinated by how you said, all right, teach me why we break bread at this time of the year and teach us what we do and how we pause. And yeah, I'm just fascinated by the way you've lived your life, to be honest.
Yeah, so Shabbat is something we do every Friday night.
Is that an Afrikaans word, Shabbat?
Go read your Bible. So, Shabbat, we meet on a Friday night. I visited a friend of mine in Zambia in 2016. It was on a weekend. His daughters were teenagers, 18, 16. His boy was 20, or it was the other way. Anyway, I saw him with his kids around the table and his wife on a Friday night. I saw his daughters look into the eyes of their dad, and they were in love with him as teenage girls. I watched his wife, and she was in love with him. And I thought to myself, whoa, if I could make sure I can do this. And so I watched them do a Shabbat evening. And it was really just come to the table every Friday night, just do a little bit of a different meal, light a couple of candles. But what my friend did, he said, every Friday night he's going to bless his wife in front of his kids. He's going to tell her how amazing she is. But he needs to do it in a way it's believable. So he needs to make sure that his heart is pure towards his wife. And he tells her something that makes her believe she's beautiful. And he did that every Friday night. And then he did the same with his kids. So he watched them during the week. When they go through their week, the struggles they struggle with, how they have victory after their struggles. And then on a Friday night, he affirms them. So I came home and I started doing the same. And we've been doing that most Friday nights. You can ask any of my family members. They'll tell you Shabbats have rescued our family. Because it was that one rhythm where no correction happens, number one. Because we know kids love the moment to tell on their siblings. So that happens 6 days a week. And we said, you can do that 6 days a week. But on Shabbat night, you're not allowed.
Brilliant.
You're not allowed to say anything negative. If you can't say positive, you keep quiet. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to receive something positive. So
Great.
just keep quiet and receive amazing. So we started doing that. So our siblings started hearing amazing things from me. But you can imagine, on a Friday morning, I had to start seeking God because many Friday mornings, my heart's not in the right place. And then only after that, I decided to start having a date with my wife on a Friday morning also. But I started asking God, just show me who she is. She's your daughter first. She's my wife second. Show me who your daughter is. What do you feel about her today? And I'll just write things down. And same about each one of my kids. And on a Friday night, I'll sit down. We'll have a lekker meal. And I'll just affirm them. Small things. No big Jewish traditions. Just rhythms of building family.
Beautiful.
Rhythms. Let's think about rhythms. Everything that God created is a rhythm. Will the sun come up? For sure. Will it go down? For sure. There's a rhythm. Will all the seasons come? Absolutely, you can bank on it. Yeah. Everything is in rhythms. Why do we believe we can go out of rhythm?
Brilliant.
It makes no sense. So I started listening and seeking the rhythms that God has placed in the Bible and just started honoring that. And somehow it feels like our whole family is now in rhythm with Him. My 17-year-old, she's in grade 11, she watched the Matrix. They started doing their thank you speeches. And she came home one night and she said, Dad, I watched them do their thank you speeches. And I thought, what am I going to say next year when I do my thank you speech? She says, the only thing I can think of is I'm going to say, I want to thank my dad for Shabbat.
Sure.
I go, whoa, from a 17-year-old saying that, that's how much meaning it has. And I asked her, what does it mean? And she said, just the rhythm of coming together in unity and to just build each other up is the most precious thing our family now has. One thing.
I think that is absolutely beautiful, bud. And again, you know, you hear your story and you read the website and you get a snapshot of the world that he's leading and is in now. And you're like, okay, give me the strategy. And you don't expect it to be, you know, Shabbat meals with the family and whatever it is, surfing holidays and teams coming together to seek the heart of God. We just don't think that's part of what builds financial success. And yet, that is exactly what has built the financial success of your story.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Any other little nuggets? I want you to close with a bit of the dream snapshot. I want you to be bold before us because we want to partner with you in prayer for just some of what you're dreaming for as Nika grows and as your network of influence grows. But any other little nuggets you can think of that are just like God showed me and this changed everything?
Yeah, so I just want to say the most important thing is hearing His voice. And I just want to leave this. God's favorite tone is a whisper.
Wow.
The only way we can hear the whisper is to quiet the noise. I'm not talking about the physical noise. I'm talking about the noise in our heads and our hearts. Where do the noises come from? Through our phones. So if we can switch off our phones and we can take regular rhythms of retreat, just 24 hours, once a week. Because think about what Shabbat is.
Yeah.
Rest from what? From this. So if you can switch off this thing on a Friday night and you switch it on a Saturday night, this is the one guarantee I want to leave on the table. I'll put money on it. Your life will change.
Wow. Wow. God's favorite tone is a whisper. I like that. All right, Batty, tell us the dream. I know beyond all the stories of humility, and there's a great grace and humility of your life, but there's this fire in you.
Yeah.
I can see. When I said, tell me the dream, I could check you just turned direction and found that gear. What's the dream? What's burning in your heart? How can we partner with you in
How much time do we have?
Tell us the 10-minute version.
Okay. So there's something that burns in my heart which is different for each of us. Okay? God has put something in our hearts that really, really burns. What is the thing that breaks your heart the most about what you see around yourself? What breaks my heart is the poverty. I live in Pretoria. My kids go to a Christian private school in an air-conditioned Volkswagen Caravelle, and at every traffic light, there's someone hungry. And some of them are little kids. It breaks me. Think about that. It breaks me. I think of little poor girls out in the township that needs to walk to school, and she doesn't know whether she's going to get molested today on her way to school. Think about that. If you're a dad and your daughter has to walk to school and you're not sure if she's going to get molested today. Think about that insecurity in her heart to go to school, just to come back to a shack and knowing, I don't know if I'm going to be safe today. That breaks my heart. That's what poverty is in our country right now. So I was just trying to work it out. Where does poverty start? It starts with how we think about ourselves. Poverty says, I'm poor because you're rich. I need to get from you in order for me to get out of poverty. Okay, so it's a broken education system that has taught that. And of course, our politicians make a meal of it. So one day we might all sit on Ballito Beach drinking pina coladas. And it's very likely that we'll have several million in investments at the age of 75. And we're drinking our pina colada. And if all you have is a few million in the bank, it's a pathetic life that we're going to die. My daughter told me, some people are so poor, all they have is money.
Sure.
Think about that. So if that's how we're going to end, it's going to be too late. You're going to go, where did I miss this? I was just thinking that through. I don't want to be that guy sitting on the beach with millions, and that's all I have. So from now until that day, I'm going to make the biggest possible impact in the education system in this country.
Come on.
I'm going to go all out. Our government spends $200 billion a year, And out of that, they've built a broken education system that is, I think, 46% of grade 1s drop out before grade 12. And those that make it to grade 12, only 8% pass math with 50% or higher. Think about that. The rest of those kids that cannot count get pumped into this economy. So, how do we fix this education system? There's a 200 billion being wasted. I want to sit in front of our government and say, why don't we partner? Business, government, we do this thing together. We'll bring half the money. You can go waste another 100 billion somewhere else.
Come on.
Will you listen? They will. I'm sure they will. So I'm going to find enough people behind me to bring 100 billion a year. We're going to sit in front of the government and we're going to tell them, why don't we do this as a partnership? It's going to be good for you and for us.
Yeah.
The worst that will happen is you'll have an extra 100 billion to waste. But in order to have a seat at the table, we need to build evidence of success somewhere. So that's what we're busy building. Through Nika Capital, we are building education systems that will help poor kids out of poverty, just with proper education.
It's amazing.
Helping families that are stuck in poverty get their kids into proper education and let those kids turn our country around. So we're busy building that. I'm busy building more support, financial support through more people. I said to Dylan, I'm sure if I sit in front of the richest people in the world and I'll tell them the story, they'll give us money.
Yeah.
If I'm willing to pay, I'm paying the first, let's call it, I'll pay the first billion. I just have to go to another 99 people. Will you pay the next billion? Will you pay the next billion? And we can get 100 billion together.
Can you see the shift? Yeah. But what I love about it is from the day that you surrendered your life to God, this has been your story. This is just the next version of the same story. It's just another Shabbat meal, another time around the Team Exco meeting going, God, what do you have next for us? And in that, God's given you this dream to sit before government. And I love it because I think one of the things of the scripture is clear. He'll stand us before kings. And that's what's happening in your life. And we want to champion that. We want to believe for it. We want to pray for it because I don't want to believe that there's a group of people and we're sitting down going, imagine one day we chat to the president and things change. I know when Batchy said that to me, there's fire in his eyes. He's like, I know the president. I know these people. I've got friends in these networks still. This is not pie in the sky stuff. This is a phone call tomorrow that I'm believing God could change things through. And so I just want to say, Bud, go. Run like there's nothing. And maybe there's a few guys in this room that will figure where you fit and phone you one day.
Some have an extra billion or two lying around.
They could have 1 or 2 billion lying around. I don't know. But I really do believe these are the kind of things that God is quickening in the spirit of his people. That really this is his story, this is his kingdom, and he's winning it back. I remember just coming off the back of COVID, and I get so tender in these spaces because you feel the weight of the Father, you know? It's not just like, just another thing we do. You just feel the weightiness of our Heavenly Father going, okay, but he's got it, he's getting it. He knows what it means to walk as a son. Do we know what it means to walk as sons and daughters? There's a weightiness behind us. He's not messing around with his family. And I remember coming off the back end of COVID and coming back into church, and we started to see people gathering again, and I was seeking God. What now, God? He said, now take my church back. It's been lost to all these different rhythms and ways, and I just felt this weightiness of the Father's voice go, I'm going to take my bride back. My son didn't die to waste his time. And I just want to say, like, when you tell your story, I sense that that's that thing. It's that pulse of heaven. It's the bigness of God impacting us little guys and going, I'm building my bride on this planet. So we honor you, bud. Big time. Yeah, thank you for being here. All right, I hope you've enjoyed your time. Of course, we could talk for hours in these spaces. Maybe he'll be back. Maybe he'll buy a property on the North Coast. You never know. Anything could happen. God speaks way louder on the North Coast than in Pretoria. It's just one of those things, yeah. Here it's actually more like a megaphone than a whisper. But yeah, it's good. We'll go with the whisper. He doesn't care. All right, let's stand. Betsy, I would love it if you could just pray what you feel to pray over aspiring businessmen, sons, daughters, as you feel there. Let's just receive, church.
But we want to start by just acknowledging your goodness. The portfolio of evidence of your goodness over our lives is massive. And we want to just stop and say that you are good. You are good. You are faithful. You are true to every one of your promises. You have never failed us, and you will never fail us. Thank you that you pursue us in a relentless way, even when we run away from you. Thank you that every time when we come back to you, we say, Father, your first response is, yes, my son, yes, my daughter. I want to thank you for that. So we want to glorify you. We want to lift you up. You are worthy of everything. You are worthy of every one of our dreams, our desires. We give them all to you. But with that, we give you our fears. We give you every fear about our country, about our lives, our families, our children, our futures, our inheritance, our assets. We give that all back to you. I just want to say, Lord, you're way more capable of keeping us safe than what we are, keeping our kids and our families safe than what we are. You're way more capable of providing than what we are. And we just give that all back to you, Lord.
And Father, as we stand as family and new friends, I pray a blessing over Bertie, over his family, over their business, Lord. We know already that your hand is on them and that you're doing great things. But Father, we ask as his brothers and sisters, God, multiply what you have entrusted to him. Multiply it. God, give him the capacity to run at the dreams of his hearts, God. Expand the breadth of the networks that you've entrusted to him, the people that will come across his path. Even now we sense as he speaks the dream, the desires of his heart, I sense, God, you're already aligning those conversations. You're already putting things in place because this is your story and your kingdom. And so we just honor you, God, for Waste Plan, for the team, for the employment, for the staff, for the families. And we just ask, God, just for the smile of heaven to be over them. As he's with us today, would you be over them? Would you be over his family today, God? May you bless this marriage moment with Bertie, God, as he takes some time out. May it be sweet, may it be refreshing. May it be the open skies of heaven, God. We bless Bertie, and we do bless those that stand in the room today, just with the kindness of God and the willingness of you to work with us, God. So we bless you and we thank you in Jesus' name.